Everyone, I like memes and I like graphs. So here we go. This is a meme and a graph and a prediction, and not made by me. So here's the blue line is the quote, "It's just the flu," and the pink line here is dead people, and the orange line here is "Holy shit, this is serious." So and the "Holy shit, this is serious" is looking like exponential growth. The "It's just the flu" is dropping, and the dead is a low five, between 5 and 10% there, I think, at the end. So it's an interesting graph, and I think that I hope it doesn't become an accurate prediction. But I mean, toilet paper aisles in my city are sold out. I've seen pictures of places downtown Toronto sold out of toilet paper. Lots of not runs on grocery stores, but I saw yesterday evening when they announced the school closure. And here's the Ontario school closure. If you haven't heard about this, you don't have kids if you haven't heard about this. But all schools would be closed for 2 weeks after March break. This is going to be interesting. And apparently they have a plan. But yesterday afternoon, after they announced this, and it was 4 o'clock after the kids were all home, apparently Walmart was very busy, and so were all the other grocery stores. So, and that's not surprising, right? I think people have been putting this off, believing that it can't happen here. There have been a few people who have been saying there's a hurricane coming, and other people just preparing quietly. And well, I mean, it's here. It's here. It's certainly here. And time to take this seriously. And this was an indication for people to take it seriously. So I'll read this now. Here we go. Ontario to close all public schools for 2 weeks after March break. The Ontario government has ordered all public schools in the province to close for the next 3 weeks as a result of the COVID-19 outbreak. The announcement, which impacts about 2 million elementary and high school students, means schools will remain closed for 2 weeks after next week's March break. The decision was made on the advice of Dr. David Williams, Ontario's Chief Medical Officer of Health, and Ontario's health experts. Education Minister Stephen Lisi issued a ministerial order to close all publicly funded schools between March 14th to April 5th. Quote, "We are taking decisive action to keep your child safe," Mr. Lisi told reporters at Queen's Park. He said the government will evaluate next steps during the 2-week closure, but assured that students will continue their studies. He did not say whether this would be through online learning. Quote, "There's a plan that is being finalized that will ensure learning continues in this province," he said. And whether that's e-learning or who knows what that is, I hope there's some form of it. We have a very powerful infrastructure in place. Why not? Why not? And well, I mean, the unions won't like it, but hey, man, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. It's very interesting. Here's CTV News saying growing number of doctors urged the feds to take more aggressive action on COVID to contain COVID-19. Now, this isn't we're not in containment anymore, but this was published yesterday at 7:40 p.m. I think that this is interesting. We're in delay at this point. We're not in containment. This is not contained. Don't fool yourself. This is endemic. That means that it is out there. It is in our communities now. There are unidentified cases. And that's not me saying that. That's Dr. John Campbell saying that. That is some other YouTubers that I watch who are well respected and have credentials. And they're not saying it about Canada, they're saying it about their country. So Dr. John Campbell specifically was talking about how England's cases, if you times it by 10, that's closer to, like England's confirmed cases, if you times it by 10, that's closer to how many cases that you will have. And he said in today's video, and the same is likely in your country too. And so that tells me that it's out and it's spreading. And what it needs to spread is human-to-human contact, human cells, right? So stay home. Stay home. Stay home. There's no good reason to go out. And I'm not going to go through this. It has been long my opinion that the Canadian government has mishandled this, has not acted when they should have acted. The WHO chief has said a couple of times that there are a lot of countries who've not acted when they should have. We could have contained this, and now not so much. And I mean, I think that inaction is going to impact people in a negative way. Here's the other big news from yesterday. Sophie Gregory Trudeau, wife of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, has tested positive. So yesterday afternoon, I mean, everything happened yesterday afternoon. Yesterday was a crazy day. From Sophie being tested, because that happened earlier in the day, and then the tests coming back, and the schools closing, and then a couple of other provinces, BC and I believe Alberta, not closing the schools. I mean, like, there's controversy. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. I think New Brunswick as well has closed schools. So there's a lot happening and just things going nuts, all crazy, right? And it's funny too, I'm going to show you in just a minute, Miss Freeland talking about all the enhanced screenings. And then I'm going to show you how the Sun and the CBC have been reporting that there have been no enhanced screenings at all. It's insanity. But first, here's the statement from the Prime Minister's office. Following medical recommendations, Sophie Gregory Trudeau was tested for COVID-19 today. The test came back positive. Also, following medical advice, she will remain in isolation for the time being. She's feeling well, is taking all the recommended precautions, and her symptoms remain mild. Like, later on, before I went to bed, after reading this, it said that she doesn't even have any symptoms anymore. The symptoms have subsided. She's fine. So, I mean, great, wonderful. I wish them health. I don't wish ill on anyone, really. I hope nobody gets this. I hope nobody passes this on. I mean, I know that's not realistic, but I saw some people talking about how prayers are answered and stuff. I mean, man, this is politics. Wish death on people, okay? Really, really. I mean, I think that Justin Trudeau is a terrible, awful, bad leader. Awful. But I don't think he deserves COVID-19. I don't think he deserves Wu flu. That's insane. And to say that on Twitter, I mean, come on, get a hold of yourselves, people. Wild. Anyway, I mean, right? You don't wish ill on people. She's a mother, for crying out loud. Back to the article. Health professionals will reach out to those who have been in contact with Ms. Gregory Trudeau as they deem necessary. The Prime Minister is in good health with no symptoms. As a precautionary measure and following the advice of doctors, he will be in isolation for a planned period of 14 days. Also, on the advice of doctors, he will not be tested at this stage since he has no symptoms. For the same reason, doctors say there's no risk to those who have been in contact with him recently. The Prime Minister will continue to fully assume his duties and will address Canadians tomorrow. And here is Miss Freeland. This was from yesterday as well. And I don't have a timestamp on this, but I apologize. But she was interviewed and she's talking about enhanced screenings. There's a couple of things I want to talk about here, but she's going to talk about enhanced screenings. It's a long clip. I think we're only going to watch about a minute of it, but I'm not going to let it go for the full 3 minutes. But here we go.
When it comes to what Canada is doing with people traveling into our country, we are constantly reviewing what is happening at Canada's border. We already have enhanced screening in place for people arriving from countries where there is an outbreak, a bigger outbreak. Coronavirus is now all over the world in more than 80 countries. But in countries where there has been a larger outbreak, we already have enhanced screening in place for travelers from those countries. And we are constantly reviewing what we're doing at the border. I would like to add two things to that. One is, for Canada, the government's approach is to be guided by the advice of medical and scientific experts.
Okay, and this is where she starts talking, and the next part is the U.S. border. So we're going to stick with airports right now. Airports and screening, okay? So this is another thing talking about enhanced screening. Okay, well, here's Joe Warmington. We're going to read through these, and then we're going to come back and listen to this guy, and then we'll come back and listen to Ms. Freeland about the American thing. Okay, so here's Joe Warmington. This is January 27th. This popped off, remember, January 22nd. January 22nd is when Wuhan got shut down, and the wider world understood that something got out or was magically created in a wet market right next to the BSL-4 lab in Wuhan. Unbelievable coincidence, right? Unbelievable. You just couldn't write a spy novel. Oh, there's been a spy novel written like that. Okay, right, whatever. But really, January 27th, we knew there were people coming in from China, from an infected area, and we knew that China, and specifically Wuhan, had locked down 11 million, then 50 million, now 700 million people. We know this. This is not, I knew this, so the government knew this, okay? So that's the context for this. No medical screenings for arrival on January 27th from 3 China flights. Just like that, more than 1,000 people. I read through this on January 27th, so I'm not gonna go through this right now. Here's another one. I think I read through this one too. Passengers with nose running like Niagara Falls questions Canada's airport coronavirus screening. That's January 31st, right? We know this. They knew this. They knew the shutdown happened in Wuhan. They knew that there were people who were sick and dying, and still no screening. And passengers were sick. Here's another one. This one's March 4th. Canada's playing with fire with lax coronavirus screenings. This is a couple of days ago. This is a week ago. Okay, people arriving in Canada from coronavirus hotspots are put on the honor system. There have been stories of people entering the country from countries with large numbers of COVID-19 cases being asked to self-quarantine for 14 days, but it's not exactly forced or enforced. Instead, upon landing, they're given a what to do pamphlet available on the Government of Canada website. And hilariously, this one is, the link is broken. If I could access the link, which apparently I can't. Anyway, and it is this question, quote, I am a returning traveler from the Hubei province in China or Iran. What do I need to do? The answer, if you have traveled to Hubei province or in China or Iran in the last 14 days, limit your contact with others for a total of 14 days, starting the day you began your journey to Canada. This means self-isolate and stay at home. In addition, contact the local public health authority in your province or territory within 24 hours of arriving in Canada. They're also advised to self-monitor for symptoms and to contact the local public health authority in the province or territory if they feel sick. And so, okay. A woman I spoke with recently arrived in Toronto Tuesday from Tehran via London. She said she wasn't screened or given orders to self-quarantine. Quote, there was no issue, she said, adding that she and her friend didn't have their temperatures taken. Neither showed signs of being sick and were not wearing masks. Health Canada officials say they would have been handed the instructions, but unless there was a secondary screening, there have been no verbal conversation. Canada's taking quite the chance with this approach. And I agree. And here's what they say is being done, okay, after all of that. This is 17 hours ago. Vasi Kopoulos, are you considering more restrictive measures at the border? Mr. Duclos, I think, John used Duclos right now. This is his answer. Here we go.
Questions to your government about whether you are doing enough to continue considering more restrictive measures at the border.
Yes, we are. Although there have been, as you know, important screening measures. Screening is key. You mentioned that earlier. Screening based on two things. First, on signs of infections, and second, on origins of people.
There are still so many cases here now of people, and pardon the interruption, of people who have gotten the virus because they traveled. I think there was 7 cases announced even today of travelers to the U.S.
That's right. So that's why we need not only to be mindful that these measures are important, but they will need to be increased as we see the progress of the situation. So the 2 procedures that have been taken, which are in fact supported by the quarantine law, is to ask and expect border security agents to intercept, interrogate, and isolate whenever needed passengers that exhibit flu symptoms or that come from places in the world where the situation is not under control.
There are genuine...
Which, as I've just clearly demonstrated, kind of's happening, maybe, ish, right? So has the screening been enhanced in the last week? I have no idea. So we'll carry on with Mom Tilt, Kara Freeland, probably going to take over for JT at some point soon, right? We'll carry on with her. She's going to talk about the American border. Here we go.
We think that is the best way to protect the health and safety of Canadians. That's the approach that we are going to take. The other comment that I think I would like to make when it comes to the border, something for Canadians to reflect on, is our single largest border is, of course, our land border with the United States, and there are 400,000 people who cross that border every day.
Well, that is feeding right into my next question, because one could foresee if Canada doesn't suspend flights, incoming flights from Europe, similar to the United States and using the same time frame, could you not foresee the United States closing that land border because someone could potentially fly into Canada and then drive into the United States to avoid the U.S. travel ban?
So I believe in never making predictions in public about anything. I don't think that's a good idea. And I would certainly never make predictions when it comes to the future behavior and decisions of other countries. We do have...
No, but it was a question about whether Canada will be required or will have to respond in kind with a similar ban.
And yeah, I'm going to keep playing it.
Because of what might be the United States response.
No, it was a question about could I foresee the U.S. doing something. So what I will say is it's very important for us to have a...
Goodness. So I think, Ms. Freeland, what you're missing here is the question is, what if the U.S. thinks that travelers can land in Canada and then walk on over the border into the U.S. or drive on into the U.S. or take another flight into the U.S. and they close the border? Because Trump closed the border with Europe. right? Not the United Kingdom, but Europe. Done. And he probably would. There's no reason to think that Canada is different. So why would you leave this giant gaping hole open for people to walk in who are sick if you want to make sure your country stays well? And Trump is certainly America first. This is a clumsy interview. She's very clumsy in it. It's not very good for her. She's kind of been battered the last day and a half. There's been a lot of interviews with her, and she hasn't come out good because what she's saying is half measures and trying to placate a public that is waking up to the rest of the world actually responding to this thing. Really. Here's Power and Politics. British Columbia is saying all non-essential travel outside Canada, including to the United States, is not recommended. And I believe Canada is looking at following suit, like the country is looking at recommending the same, but they have not yet. But here's BC.
Side of Canada, and that includes the United States. I think this is really important. It is clear at this time that the evolving situation, both in the United States and globally, is a risk for all of us, and we are strongly advising people not to travel. We are
strongly advising people not to travel. Don't get on a cruise ship. Don't anything. So here is another little Chrystia Freeland interview, and I think this is worthwhile. It's queued up. So here we go.
Should not be a cause for anxiety. Rather, it should be something that people look at and see and say, actually, we are behaving well and intelligently as a country. And I don't want to minimize at all the situation. I think it's important for people to understand that the advice we're getting from experts is this is a serious situation and it is likely to get worse before it gets better. All of our efforts need to be about flattening the curve. When it comes to Parliament, I think that is a really
flattening the curve. This is the idea of not having all the cases at one time, because if we have all the cases at one time, it'll overwhelm our healthcare system. That's the point that she's trying to make here. So we're going to flatten the curve. We're going to lengthen this thing out. We're going to make the illness not as bad because there will be enough medical supplies and people to take care of the sick. That's the idea. That's the flatten the curve idea. And she said this is going to get worse before it gets better. At the same time as defending the lax border security, at the same time as defending still keeping our immigration levels at the same level as they always are, like this isn't a massive crisis that's unfolding in front of us right now. It is tone deaf. It is unbelievable that they're continuing as if life were just carrying on as normal in the face of the fact that countries are closing their borders with Italy. Countries are closing their borders. The United States closed its borders to Europe. That is unprecedented. Disneyland shut down. That's one of my last stories. Disneyland is closed, right? They closed it. Walt Disney World and Universal Studios announced they're closing amid coronavirus. 15 new cases were reported in the state of Florida. That has never happened. You don't quarantine 700 million people for nothing. You don't quarantine 60 million people and shut down Italy for nothing. You don't shut down the manufacturing engine of the entire world for nothing. So having Canada say, no, guys, we got this, everything's fine, we're just not going to test anybody, is really, really tone deaf. It's really awful. And this is from today. Viruses don't carry passports. Why travel bans won't work to stop the spread of COVID-19. Travel bans are being used by countries around the world. This is garbage level propaganda. Trash. And they're trying to say this is the science. This is the science. The science says travel bans don't work, except that Wuhan was shut down, quarantined, travel ban. Japan has parts of it that are shut down. Iran is just imploding. South Korea is using quarantines. Italy is shut down. 60 million people in quarantine. As I've said before, you don't do these things for nothing. These are travel bans. These are travel bans imposed on their own citizens in their country. Why on God's green earth is Canada not responding to what is happening while other countries are, other leaders are? I mean, I understand that Trudeau's wife has it, but at some point, you have to respond to the very real threat that's at your doorstep. I've had as well trolls and people trying to say, and not even trolls, people who who said, you should know better, Mark. This is a disinformation campaign. Okay, prove it though, right? Prove it though. Like I said, you don't shut down all of those things for nothing, right? And I can't imagine the level of coordination necessary to pull that off if it's not actually a real and present danger. Don't look at what they say, look at how they act. How many CEOs have left since December 2019? Where did they go? Are they on to new jobs? No. Are they out of the public eye? Where? There's something going on. It's clear. But I don't know what it is. And if it's not a very deadly virus that has made the world governments respond the way it has, that has made the engine of the world's products shut down, shut down. It seems like it would need to be something that's this serious. It would need to be something that is universal. It doesn't matter how rich you are to the virus, right? The virus doesn't care how much money you have. And that's got the world government scared as well as the leadership all has it. So, I mean, if it's a hoax, more fool me, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. I'd rather be holed up in my house while the world governments do these things, while the manufacturing engine of the world is shut down, rather than walking around pretending like everything's just fine and maybe catching this deadly virus, right? It just seems like it seems a little odd to firmly believe that this is also a lie. And I mean, yeah, I've seen the news articles about global warming that are just as much fake. And I'm not putting my faith in the news. I'm putting my faith in the government's behavior, right? Like governments around the world, uncoordinated governments around the world. Communist China is behaving the same as Italy. Trump is doing the same thing as, shutting down travel is the way he's fighting this, right? So, I mean, if it's fake, more fool me, I guess. But I can't imagine it. I can't imagine the level of corruption and conspiracy needed to make what COVID-19 did in reality, in my opinion, fake, right? I couldn't imagine it. So maybe that's me. Here's Stephen Meyer, and he said on Twitter what I think. So, and I don't know if he's a person of note. He doesn't. Oh, he does have a blue check mark. He's a contributing editor at Maclean's. So we probably disagree, but we agree on this. He says, by closing schools, I think Ford Nation has now been more proactive in responding to this pandemic than Justin Trudeau. Yeah, I agree with that. And Alberta bans all public gatherings of more than 250 people. 23 Alberta cases confirmed. So, and there's other things that Alberta is doing, but I'm going to leave it there. You don't do all these things for nothing. You don't close Disneyland. You don't close China. You don't shut down the manufacturing. Like, even if the manufacturing engine being shut down is a big deal, not because of dollar stores, but because of medical supplies, right? So even if things return to normal, even if we have a vaccine and it's 100% effective and everybody's like, yeah, we beat it, we've still got 6 months of pain to get things back up and running the way they should be. And maybe some people will be more affected than other people, but there are going to be impacts from medication shortages. How many diabetics can do without their insulin? What's the plan for that? Is there a stockpile somewhere? I don't know. I don't know the answer to those questions. And that's just off the top of my head. I feel like there's going to be a bigger impact than people are anticipating. And I think people are going to be surprised. And I be prepared. There's nothing we can do. This is a hurricane and it's out of everybody's control, leadership included. So the only thing we can control is how we respond. And we're being told one thing, lots of screenings for sure, definitely. Screenings are plenty, right? And something else is going on, right? So how much can you trust leadership that doesn't have its eye on the ball, for lack of a better term? It really doesn't. Okay, 25 minutes is too much. Sorry, everyone. Thanks for watching. Check out CanadaPoly.com, check out CanadaReport.co, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.